Good morning. Good morning. Today is Friday, November 22nd, and Councilmember Mitchell Englander, Chairman of the committee, and I'm joined by the Honorable Council members Mitchell Farrell and Joe Buscaino. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Thank you very much. I understand Ms. Martinez had an urgent meeting this morning, so she will not be able to make it. But we do have a quorum, so thank you for that. First and foremost, I've got a number of consent items without objection. If my colleagues want to call these special, we can certainly do that. I'll see if there are any cards on these, and there are none. So item 7, item 8, 9, 10, and 11, these are a number of grants. I've reviewed them all and appreciate the CAO reports along with them. We'll go ahead and adopt those reports without objection. That'll be the order. So if you're here on those items, thanks for coming in this morning. Appreciate it. Then with that, we're going to go ahead and we'll go into general public comment and take that first. Dr. Williams, followed by Walker Foley. You can have a seat as well. You want to come on up? And Alexandra, is it Nagy? Nagy. All right. Good morning. How are you? Morning, Tom. How are you?
Good morning. I'm sleepy. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, also Sierra Club Oil and Gas Committee. We're interested today because you have a lot of things regarding earthquakes. However, we're quite concerned regarding what happens to certain facilities of high impact if there is an earthquake of substantial size and these systems fail. What's the primary one? January 2013, explosion and fire flaring at the Southern California Gas Company's Playa del Rey facilities. One exception is that, hey, I've studied that one. I studied the Montebello one as part of a CPUC investigation. Problem. They had to shut down the Montebello one and take ethics training. Staff of a facility had to take ethics training. Why? Because they were falsifying records. What happened at Playa del Rey? We don't know. Has there ever been a cause determined for the explosion and flaring? They're having problems also in Goleta. Odors, things going on without the neighbors knowing what's happening. But what happens if there's a big earthquake and the systems that have probably already failed big time? You can have a house, if it goes down, my insurance agent says don't turn off the gas because you're not covered by earthquake insurance, but you are covered by fire insurance. So there's a lot of things going on, but central, identify the high impact facilities within our city that could be subject to earthquakes because it is coming. We don't know when, we don't know where. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Walker Foley. I'm actually a constituent in your district, Councilmember Englander.
Well, thanks for driving all the way down here this morning.
You guys. Take a drive down to NoHo and then take the train in.
Even better.
But I'd like to thank you for your motions regarding earthquake preparedness. I'm a recent resident of California, and I've dealt with tornadoes most of my life, but earthquakes is a whole new thing for me. So my home state's Ohio, and we've actually seen an uptick not only in shale gas fracking in our state, but in injection wells in the southeast corner of our state. And along the lines of earthquake preparedness, it's much like cancer. We can talk about finding a cure, but if we don't talk about prevention, we're not looking at, sustainable solutions. So I want to talk about injection wells, of which we have a few in Los Angeles. These are wells where they take the wastewater from their fracked jobs, these well pads, and they put them underground at high pressures. And these wells, these injection wells, have, by the U.S. Geological Survey, been proven to increase the risk of earthquakes. And in my state in Ohio and the southeast corner, where we never had earthquakes in recorded history of our state, we now have 4.0 magnitude earthquakes because of these wastewater injection wells. So as we go forward talking about earthquake preparedness, and as LA considers this moratorium on fracking, I would just like to say that these things are linked and to please keep them into your consideration. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Alexandra Nagy, and I'm also a resident in Chatsworth, and I work for the nonprofit consumer advocacy organization called Food and Water Watch. And one of our big priority campaigns in California is for a moratorium on fracking, and we're also working on the moratorium on fracking in LA that was introduced by Mike Bonin and Paul Koretz. So thank you for that. And I also come to this with a big concern for earthquakes. I lived through the Northridge earthquake. Very young, but I still remember the major impacts. And I just recently learned that there's fracking occurring in the Aliso Canyon where I like to go hike. And there are 6 injection wells there. And like Walker said, injection wells are what are causing the earthquakes in Ohio and Arkansas and Oklahoma. And I also learned that the Santa Susana Fault, which runs right through the Aliso Canyon, is considered the most vulnerable fault in the San Fernando Valley by the California Division of Geology and Mines. And it has a magnitude potential of 7.4. And this isn't the only place in Los Angeles where we do see injection wells by big earthquake faults. We're seeing this in the Inglewood oil field. The Newport-Inglewood fault line is also a 7.3 magnitude scale. And so I'm very nervous about this potential if we're continuing to inject lubricants back into the ground and they're lubricating our faults. If we do have an earthquake and we kind of have these vulnerable areas around our city, I'm curious about the multiplier effect. There was a study that came out that said earthquake swarms are a possibility from fracking injection wells. And there was an earthquake in Japan that caused earthquake swarms in Texas where there are a bunch of injection wells. So to me, there's a lot left to be understood and studied about this issue. And so I want to bring it up based on earthquakes being discussed today.
All right, thank you very much. Did you take the train as well?
Yes.
Fantastic, excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming this morning. Seeing no other public comment cards, that will conclude the general public comment for the meeting. I also want to thank Councilmember Mike Bonin for being here this morning as well. Appreciate that. And if we can note for the folks just listening in that aren't present, Mike is wearing a tie this morning, so yeah.
So it'll be a long council meeting.
Be a long council. Yeah, presentations. Okay. With that, we actually have some very serious issues this morning to discuss. So I want to thank all the staff as well and for being here. With that, we'll go with item 1 first, if we can.
Good morning, John White, City Clerk. Item 1, motion Englander Buscaino, instructing the LAPD to report relative to the use and implementation of on-officer camera technology, internal disciplinary actions, what video is discoverable, and the video retention period.
Maggie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. Thank you.
Excellent.
Maggie Goodrich, I'm the CIO for the LAPD. I'm joined by Sergeant Dan Gomez, who heads my tactical technology section. So I'll start with just an update over on where we are with the field test since we last met. So as you recall, we have 2 vendors who have offered devices for us to perform the field test. The first is Taser. We've received 30 cameras from Taser about a week ago. We're currently doing the inventory on those devices, asset tagging, all of those things. We've received several days of training from Taser, so we received system administration training and back office training, learning how to retrieve the video, assign the cameras, manage video, configure the system basically, set security settings, that type of thing. So we've received that training. We also learned how to install the hardware, so we have to actually install the cradles, basically the docking stations for the cameras. So that's what you plug them into to upload the video and also to charge the batteries. So we went through that installation process as well to just learn it. Had to have ITA actually assist us, opening some ports on the firewall to be able to connect to evidence.com, which is the repository for for the video, that type of thing. So it's really been about training and logistics and learning about the technology over the last few weeks. We've also received about 30 volunteers to begin the field test. They are from the Central Division Safer Cities Initiative. We're starting there because they do a lot of foot beats. And so, we wanted to start basically outside of patrol vehicles, right, where they are going to be getting in-car video. So we're starting with those foot beats. That will be followed by testing by motor officers eventually. But while we're doing the foot beat testing, we'll be working out the details of the actual mounting of the cameras on the motor helmets. As far as next steps, we plan in about 2 weeks from now to begin training the volunteers on the system, on the devices, and then thereafter we'll begin the 90-day field test. The other thing that we're doing is putting the guidelines together for the field test, basically sort of a draft policy that will be approved by Chief Beck before that's put into place. And the other thing we're doing is meeting with the other vendor who has offered devices, and that is Coban. The reason we're going with Coban as a second vendor is because their solution actually integrates with the in-car video solution that we have with Coban. So same storage, same back office software that we already know, that type of thing. So we'll be meeting with them to plan out the testing of the Coban devices. And we'll be asking all of the officers who have volunteered for the testing to test all of the different devices so that we get feedback from each of them on the pros and cons of each device. And then we'll begin configuration of that software as well. So as they can complete the testing with the TASER device, we'll be able to then swap out the Coban device. The next major steps as the field test is going along is to develop the draft policy based on the results from that field test. So as we see how the devices are used in the field, the ease of use of turning them off and on, activating them, retrieving video, that type of thing, that will really inform the policy. And then we'll be having discussions about that policy, obviously with the league, as we do the meet and confer, and that'll involve employee relations, the city attorney, Office of Operations. We'll also be involving the Inspector General and the ACLU on privacy concerns. So that's where we are.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And if I could take a step back on this as well. And first of all, thank you and the department. Sergeant Gomez, thank you as well. And this is something that I started looking at a number of years ago, as you well know, and exploring it. There weren't a lot of providers in the space at that time. The amendment, and I have amendment on the motion that we're going to note and file with some requests as well, but it'll be a note and file ultimately. And since looking into this a number of years ago and wanting to explore it, there's been a lot that has changed since the implementation of the idea of this, with the technology, with the types of cameras, certainly the different providers. This motion originally set off as asking TASER International, which at that time was the only provider that we were aware of in the space. We've learned of Coban having on-officer cameras and some others as well, and so we'll amend it to include the Coban pilot as well for the motion. But with that, really want to thank Steve Soberoff as well, the President of the Commission. When we first sat down and spoke, in fact, about his opportunity and his candidacy to become a police commissioner, he had asked what the top priorities I had as the chair of public safety were. And first and foremost, there were protecting the public and the officers themselves, looking at risk management and how we can lower some of the costs in what we're paying out in many of these lawsuits. And a lot of those solutions with what we're looking at, the statistics coming back with in-car video, which have been phenomenal. We've just rolled that out in the second phase, and hopefully at some point in the very near future will be citywide, because it's proven to really not only protect, again, those officers, but also to protect the public and to protect the city and the taxpayer. So it's been very transparent. It's been a great process so far, and proven. And it's been one of the chief's top priorities for good reason. And so I want to compliment the chief directly as well. and looking at how we can expand and enhance that system with all the officers that aren't necessarily in front of a black and white or transporting, and looking at on-officer cameras for motors, for field officers, and it's really come a long way. So in talking to Commissioner Soberoff about that, he said, that's fantastic, let me run with it. And run he has. He's done a phenomenal job in not only promoting it to the media and going out there in a very transparent manner and talking about not only the obstacles and issues and concerns that people might have, the officers might have, bringing the lead together, but raising well over $1 million of private money, which is phenomenal and has really become a model in what we could be doing in other departments as well. In fact, there was a Stanford study that just came out, and it was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal recently, in the Daily Journal rather, on, here's a model of public-private partnerships to work with individuals, philanthropy, and public safety, and bringing all that together. And he's done a phenomenal job, and I want to compliment him on that. As you mentioned, there are a number of policy directives that will be coming out of pilot. Many of those we've discussed in detail and through many meetings. I've also had meetings with TASER directly and Coban, seen the technology. They're both similar but altogether different, if you will, and they complement and enhance what we're doing with in-car video with whatever provider we ultimately will go with, which will be up to the department. But with that, the LA Times recently came out with an editorial, in fact, just this week, and encouraged what we've been doing and working with the police union, the PPL, and other stakeholders. They asked a number of questions in their editorial. Will the cameras be on all the time? At what point in an interaction will they be switched on? Will officers be required to tell people they're being recorded? And many other issues. With that, are the recordings public record? All these questions we've actually been discussing here publicly and in technology meetings that we've had, that the department has been exploring these best practices, what other cities are doing, what the vendors recommend, what the chief officers nationally are looking at, and our own in-house expert, toy technologist and extraordinaire, Sergeant Gomez. So with that, I'm confident all these answers are coming out. They're being explored. Just wanted to share that with those who are listening as well, that it's been a very transparent, thought-out process. And so wanted to thank you for that as well. And I know all these questions and answers have been asked, will continue to be asked, will continue to be answered. They're all being explored in a very thought-out policy, and I want to thank you for that. In terms of the testing itself, the question I have is if we're going to be testing two different technologies and the storage system of one ties into the in-car video we have, are they going to be, you'd mentioned, and I just want for some clarification, I suppose, that the volunteers, they're police officers who are volunteering to test and give their feedback on and their thoughts as it relates to the various systems. If they're the same officers, and you'd mentioned some will be the footbeat officers that don't have in-car video, because we already know sort of what that does and we want to test it in the field. But then the other technology is actually stored in the vehicle with the in-car video. So those would be different officers. So I was trying to figure out.
To clarify, it uses the same back-end storage, meaning the same servers and all of that for storage, but it's not actually stored in the vehicle.
Okay, so it wouldn't be
via the device to servers.
Got it. So we can still use those same field officers.
Made in storage for in-car video will be leveraged for this.
Excellent. You always have all the best answers. One day, I'll stump you one day.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Excellent. Fantastic.
You might not stump him, but you'll stump me.
Yeah. I'll never stump him. With that, turn it over to any of my colleagues to ask any questions. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. And I want to thank Maggie and Sergeant Gomez moving forward on this, and of course, Commissioner Soboroff for taking the lead on this. How are we doing on the fundraising of these devices?
The last number I heard Commissioner Soboroff mention in Police Commission on Tuesday was a little over $1.2 million raised.
And per unit, how much of these units cost?
So it varies per unit. The taser for the actual devices is about $500 per device, and the Coban unit is actually more than that. It's about $700 per device.
Got it. And why the difference between the two companies in cost?
Two different approaches. In terms of the taser device, you also buy, as part of that, you buy the storage. So aside from the device, you also have an additional cost for the storage, so it brings up the total cost, where the Coban device, you're only paying for the device, and then you're leveraging your own infrastructure. So once you purchase that, that's a one-time cost.
Got it. And the test period, how long is the test period? These
We're planning about 90 days for the
90
field
days.
test.
Well, I also want to commend the 30 volunteer officers here in Central Division, right? Part of the Safer City Initiative. Work in the field for nearly 15 years. Every time the department comes to us or comes to police, the field officers with something new. Change is different. One more thing to check out in the kit room. I just want to commend the 30 volunteer officers who are stepping forward and making sure this thing works. Just going back, I'm so proud of our police department. I'm really proud of the effort of the whole transparency that instilling that faith, trust, and confidence in the public. And the LAPD has had some dark history, as we all know. But because of the consent decree, I've often say the consent decree has made this police department a premier law enforcement agency in the world. And for that, I thank you for your leadership and your commitment in moving forward.
Mr. Bonner.
Thanks. Good morning. Thanks. I had a couple questions. I'm not nearly as knowledgeable about this as Mr. Englund or Mr. Buscaino, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around this a little bit. And I'm curious about the sample pool. There's 30 volunteers. I would imagine that the folks who are most willing and eager to volunteer to use this are more tech savvy than the general population. They're more eager to use technology. They're more eager to try stuff. So it would be a slightly, I would imagine, a sort of skewed sample of how folks would react to the technology. Has there been any, is that a correct assumption?
Yeah. I understand the logic behind that, but really the unit that we have is comprised of folks that have a little bit of time on the job to quite a bit of time on the job, especially because it also includes the supervisors that are within that unit. And part of our due diligence in all this technology has been to make sure that we're picking technology that isn't complicated. Really, it's all about pushing a couple buttons and making sure that you hear the beep and it goes on. That way it doesn't stop them from doing their primary job or keeping their primary focus on what's in front of them rather than the technology. So we're fortunate that this particular group, since it is primarily a footbeat and an out-of-the-car group, we believe that they're going to leverage it. Central Division is very, very busy during the holidays, so they're going to have a lot of community contacts. So again, we think it's a win-win. But of the people, and I know some of them personally, I certainly would not always say that they're tech-savvy. I would just say that in general, though, I think we're all used to cell phones and smartphones. So to that level, I think we have a basic user group.
How many volunteers were you hoping to get?
About 30 for
About
the 30. You have 30 devices. We were looking for 30 volunteers.
Yeah. No, I understand. So you got the target population you wanted.
Right.
Is there a reason they're all from the same unit?
Yes, from a technical perspective, yes. Because we have, in this case, we have to install equipment, they have to be issued the equipment, they have to upload the equipment. It's much easier to have all in one spot. Also, from a service standpoint, we're going to do a lot of white glove treatment in the beginning to make sure that they're comfortable with the technology, so we can be there to make sure that the training aspect all works. So from a sample pool, it was better to have it, and they also can rely on each other to be able to help themselves as they go through this process. One officer can make up for another officer if they don't quite understand something. But again, we'll be there as a white glove treatment during the beginning to make sure that they fully understand how to use the system through this process.
And in terms of the number of interactions an officer has a day, typically with a member of the public, how typical or atypical is this unit of 30 volunteers compared to people from different units or different parts of the city?
Yeah, I would say that all the Safer City initiatives, and there's several throughout the city, they actually probably have a little bit of a higher contact rate because that's their primary focus is to be on footbeats. So unlike a radio car where you're constantly responding simply to the call for service, here part of their job is to be proactive, to have more consensual encounters out in the field. So I think for our purposes, it actually plays to our benefit because we'll have, in that case, more sample video than we would in a general population. So it's easier to scale downward than it would be to take a look upward.
Because it's primarily foot patrol, right? Will they tend to have the camera on more consistently than folks who are on a different detail?
So the short answer is I believe yes, but that is part of this field trial is to make sure that we're understanding those parameters. Certainly if we need to adjust as we go, we will. But certainly in looking at public contacts and how these different units operate, we believe that this is actually a pretty ideal situation to be able to have it on this particular unit.
So we have these 30 guys who will have on-body cameras, and then we're moving forward with the in-car cameras. At a certain point, we want to get to a point where even the folks who are in the cars with the in-car cameras will have on-body, right?
Yeah.
I imagine their experience, and that's a greater number of officers, right? The ones in car, that their experience is different. They'll be turning it on and off more often. Is there a reason why we're not doing folks in car as well as foot patrol?
So I think one of the values of this lesson is to understand the difference. So by having it in a unit that isn't currently that doesn't currently have that as their key responsibility, I think gives us a better understanding of how it would work. And we would think that right now we don't capture any of that, right? This is a unit that has nothing. So if we give it to them, we see how they interact. We have good knowledge. We know how much video is used on in-car video. We know what the average times are. We have lots of statistics to verify our use case scenario. Here we have nothing. So by having it separate, it's kind of our control. We'll know what it is. Eventually when we put them together and we compare the numbers, then we have a true kind of overall look at the deployment rather than if we put them together right at the beginning. We don't know if they're relying more that they had the in-car video and perhaps they were a little slow to turn it on. Again, it gives us a clear sample pool between the two.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. The thing I was thinking of is when you merge the systems or when someone's using both, I imagine those would present different challenges, the remembering to use the different one or the different technologies between the two, if they're different technologies as opposed to the same, that would create a different sort of generation of challenges or things to look at.
Right, and that will likely be a follow-up study, right?
Okay.
Excellent. Very good questions. Very thought out. Thank you. Thank you. And so with that, really again wanted to thank you for all the work and effort that you've put into it, and I know there's a lot more to do. This is only the beginning, so appreciate it. I think it's very exciting. I mean, if you start thinking about just the return on investment and the possibilities and how much we pay out in lawsuits, how much safer not only the officers but the public themselves will be and feel, because people conduct themselves very differently when they know they're on camera, as we all know. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead without objection, note and file with the amendments, and move that on to council as well. Very good. Thank you very much. If you could stick around, I was going to take next the ADSAC camera systems.
We'll stay seated then, because we're here for that.
But I do have Mr. LaBonge here on items 3, 4.
I think that's be quick.
You okay?
You want to move traffic?
Okay. Yeah, terrific. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Item 2, motion Englander, Buscaino, Garcetti, Zine, instructing the CLA, CAO, LAPD, and DOT to report relative to the current level of integration and compatibility between ATSAC and LAPD's surveillance monitoring system.
So let me open it up for the discussion on this one, and want to again thank you and appreciate it. One of the things I looked at is we have hundreds of these cameras over key intersections throughout the city of Los Angeles. They've been put in by the Department of Transportation for the sole purpose of traffic flow, movement control, etc. And looking at this, how we can best enhance the system, look for other opportunities for shared data with the Los Angeles Police Department as it relates to whether it's Ebola announcement, be on the lookouts, whether it's looking for accident investigation, whether it's camera systems for enhancing our license plate LPRs, or any of the like, where we can utilize it to expand and be a force multiplier and use it as part of the LAPD monitoring systems as well. And with that, there's been, I know, a lot of work that's gone into this, and from what I've heard and read so far, a lot of opportunity for the future as well. So I really appreciate it. And colleagues, and so looking at this, we've got hundreds of these department cameras from DOT all over the city of Los Angeles in key intersections. And if you can imagine the possibilities, if you will, of what that can do to help not only with DOT and what they're doing, but what we can do with LAPD if we had DVR capabilities where we can go back and look at accidents and incident reports, car chases, people fleeing, all kinds of information, Amber Alerts, kidnaps, bank robberies, and the like, where if you can stitch those together in real time, perhaps, as the future holds with technology, we're seeing that one of the things we saw with on-officer cameras was fascinating because you can have different POVs, point of view from different officers, and then in real time hit one button and take 3, 4, 5, 10 cameras and automatically stitch them together from different points of view in real time so you can watch something unfold from different angles. So imagine doing that with our ADSAC systems and how we could utilize that in the future. And perhaps the capability isn't there now or yet, but I think we can get there. So with that, that was my thought in introducing this motion. And so if you can walk us through sort of what is ADSAC, where are we at, and what challenges and solutions might be there to get there someday.
Good morning, members. Sean Scan from the Department of Transportation. Briefly, ADSAC was a program we started in 1984 for the Olympics. We installed upgrades to our traffic signals to improve traffic flow, and over the years we started installing cameras. We have over 500 cameras installed citywide. They're all connected back via fiber optics to our traffic control center in the basement of City Hall East, and we use them, as Mr. Englander said, for surveillance and traffic control purposes only. We read with great interest this motion because we think that there are some potential integration with LAPD, but at this time the technology we've been using, because it was originally geared for traffic control, is not one that lends itself easily to integrate with LAPD. And additional studies as to how this could be accomplished are really necessary before we can move forward with a plug-in. We currently have, just as a side note, a feed over to their EOC Racer section, where they're able to observe video from 6 of our cameras at any time. But I think it's an observe-only situation. It was done for event management, not for the purposes of what we're discussing here today. But I do want to say at least we have a baseline infrastructure in place. We have a very good foundation. It's just the top-level integration is where we would need some additional studies and funding to make what you envision happen.
And I can hit on a few of the differences in the technology that pose those challenges. Obviously, LAPD agrees that there's a lot of opportunity here for integration and to leverage the infrastructure that's in place. The technology differences, I'll just hit on, there are quite a few of them, but I'll hit on a few of the major ones. One is that the cameras at ADSAC are generally analog rather than digital, and not specifically designed for license plate recognition in particular. The LAPD uses single-purpose infrared cameras to read plates. Also, the positioning is a little different, right? The ADSAC cameras are designed and positioned to look at traffic flow, where the LPR cameras are designed specifically and positioned specifically to be reading plates. So it's a little bit of a different positioning, definitely a different technology, and typically for LAPD, even where we install a surveillance camera, the LPR, when you hear LPR, it doesn't mean that there's license plate recognition software just put on that surveillance camera. It's actually a dedicated license plate recognition camera that's also installed. So you have 2 cameras in one location. The other thing is basic but needs to be studied is just the pole infrastructure. The poles where the ATSAT cameras are installed today, can they support the weight? Do they meet the power requirements? That type of thing for an LPR camera if we were to do an integration. Like I said, I just hit a few of the major issues. There are some other technical nuances. But what we're really in need of is sort of an analysis and study of how all of this would work together and what the next steps would be to make it work.
Excellent. Thank you very much, colleagues.
I have a quick question. So the 500 cameras that exist in ADSAC are analog, or for the most part?
For the most part, that's correct.
Are there plans, or is there funding, or a combination of both, to update those into digital? And are there plans or funding to add additional cameras to our intersections?
There's no plans or funding to upgrade them all to digital right now. The few digital we have were kind of an experiment. At the very end of the last ADSAC project, we got the vendor to supply some. They don't work as well for us as the analogs do, but we have them. There are plans, however, to install additional cameras at additional intersections that don't yet have video detection as we determine the need. We do have some leftover Prop 1B funding from the state that we are going to use to install additional cameras at select intersections around the city.
And those will be analog?
We haven't made that choice yet because we haven't identified all the intersections. Obviously, if this discussion progresses, we may want to rethink the technology so we don't put something in that they can't use. We're open on that one. That hasn't been decided yet.
So we can start thinking ahead of compatibility.
Right. I think, all the stuff that was put in before this was not thought with that in mind. And now that we have this at the forefront, we can work together to make sure that what we put in isn't incompatible, at least.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you. If you look at when these cameras were first installed, why wasn't LAPD looped into the infrastructure, planning of the infrastructure? Now I know we're looking at this now, years later. Was there a breakdown in communication between the two respective departments?
I don't think there was ever a breakdown. We started very slow. The first ADSAC signal went in 1984, but the first ADSAC camera didn't go in until 1987, 3 years later on the top of City Hall South. We slowly added cameras, only 1 or 2 per system after that. So we were very light in our coverage with cameras. But after we discovered how effective they are with traffic control, we ramped up, and now we put them in at every major cross street, pretty much on a 1 mile by 1 mile grid. LAPD was aware of what we were doing. Maybe we could have integrated or talked to them sooner, but the departments don't always have a connection. And yes, that's right too. Yeah, Maggie, thank you for that. One of the major sources of funding we got for our ADSAC projects was from the FHWA, and at the time they did not allow the use of their funding for video surveillance for anything other than traffic control. We were not allowed to record the video. We were not allowed to.
So the specific funding used. I see.
That one.
There was a funding restriction.
I see.
It was not meant for public safety funding.
Okay, that makes sense.
Very recently, we've contacted the FHWA, and in light of what's happened in other parts of the country, they have backed off that a little bit and said, okay, as long as the primary user doesn't use it for recording, which would be DOT, a secondary user could use it for that purpose. So we would be able to send as long as the feeds come to us and we process them, if we send a feed out to LAPD, then they can do the recording because there's a secondary usage. But FHWA doesn't want to be funding cameras with the primary usage being security and surveillance.
I note in the report there's a 27% failure rate in the ATSAC cameras right now. Of those cameras that are not in working condition, is there a plan to upgrade those specific cameras?
Yes, we have a proposal in to get a contract to have those replaced and repaired and put back in.
Is there an opportunity here now to collaborate with LAPD when we do those upgrades?
There might be. When we replace a camera, the technology...
And how many specific cameras are there when you talk about 27% failure rate?
125 of the total number of cameras are in some fashion not functioning. We may have video, but we're not able to move the camera, or we may not have video or able to move the camera. But we can't just plop a digital camera on a pole that's set up for an analog system because the fiber interface isn't right. It wouldn't work. So we would have to, for future systems, we can design a transport network that supports digital imaging, but we can't directly put a digital camera on our existing analog transport system without upgrading the whole transport system, which is a lot more than just changing the camera.
And do you have specific costs of what the cost is of transitioning from analog to digital?
Well, a typical camera costs about $3,700.
But the entire transport system.
Oh, the entire
would have
transport
to be
system,
replaced.
yeah,
Millions.
that's millions of dollars, yes, because it spans far and wide. It radiates out from City
Big
Hall
network.
all the way out to the valley and San Pedro and everywhere. So it would be a lot of work to upgrade that. It would be a big project.
Let me note, it's great to have our chair here, Public Safety, also sit on the Budget and Finance Committee.
I've got several recommendations based on that I'm going to go through as well. And I see where I see problems or some people identify problems, I look at solutions, and I think there are a number of solutions that you've articulated well that I'm going to address in recommendations, so I appreciate that.
And my line of questioning was the same as Mr. Buscaino's, but I had one more question. So a quarter of the cameras aren't working, but you said that we're looking to install cameras at additional intersections?
That's correct.
Why wouldn't we be repairing or replacing the existing but not functional cameras instead of expanding the number of intersections?
Well, we would like to do that. The funding grants that we have are for new capital only. We can't use it for maintenance. So we can't use capital money to buy replacement cameras. So we are working, and I have submitted into our budget process a contract to have someone come out and replace all the defective cameras. And we got a very good price bid on it. So we're moving forward with that. It's just, I wanted to make clear in this list that not every camera works all the time. And so even though we have a camera maybe at Hollywood and Highland and something bad happens at Hollywood and Highland, DOT can't guarantee that we're going to have video from Hollywood and Highland without a preventative maintenance program that we can have keeping our cameras at top-notch level. I mean, it would be sad if that situation ever happened because then we have all the infrastructure but it's not working. But that's just the reality. These cameras are up on poles and subject to a lot of elements.
Mr. Buscaino, I think it's probably also fortuitous that the chair of the Transportation Committee sits on the budget.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. We can get a lot of things done here.
There's a lot of ADSAC stuff that is probably more appropriate for me to talk about in T committee. Depending on the chairman's recommendations, I'd be happy to also hear this in T committee at whatever time you think is appropriate, or if I should do a separate motion, whatever your pleasure, Mr. Chair.
Nice.
Can I ask a question real quick?
As a member of public comment, I turn it over to the distinguished Tom LaBonge.
If there's an accident at an intersection, does anyone ever look for do you get outside inquiries to look for anything?
Yes, we do a lot.
And by law, you have to give it to them.
Well, first we don't record anything, so we have nothing to give. But should we have recorded anything, by law we would have been required to give it.
I got it there.
So that is also a concern, something that as LAPD would have to deal with if they start to do recording, that they might get requests from insurance or from accident victims and saying, I want to see the surveillance from that. That is a real possibility. But for DOT, it's not an issue because we don't record, so we have nothing to prove.
Got it. Martin Luther King, the first street that we had ADSEC on?
It was one of them, yes, down by the Coliseum, right.
And do you have that, the last question, do you have that patented? And is the city, you developed it, we developed ADSEC, correct?
We developed ADSAC, that's right.
But is it patent or?
It's copyrighted because it's software.
Did the city receive any revenue from that, or?
Yes, we have distributed it.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And great answers. This is complicated. I appreciate all the thought and research that went into this. In answering Mr. LaBonge's question, it's the same thing we're looking at with on-officer cameras and in-car cameras, that these won't be a matter of public record by insurance companies or otherwise for any purpose. It's a part of a criminal investigation, and that's treated separately. But those policies are being developed, so I might be speaking a little prematurely on that, and I'll let the department deal and handle that at the appropriate time. With that, I do have a number of recommendations because I do see a great collaboration and opportunity here. And the first would be to instruct the LAPD to explore using UASI grant funding to commission a study to review the current city ADSAC infrastructure for the purpose of leveraging the current camera network perhaps switching over to a digital system, the idea of adding LPR functionality, DVR recording capabilities, and we'll give you these in writing as well. So I got a number of them. The second one would be to instruct the Department of Transportation to review current grant opportunities relevant to any street lighting and or controlled intersection poles, as well as any future grant funding impacts for adding LPR or future construction, and working with LAPD to report back on that as well. The third one would be to have a secondary split feed to LAPD for DVR and recording capabilities and control. The fifth would be to report back from DOT regarding the digital camera and benefits of digital versus analog. And finally, to collaborate all new and replacement cameras with LAPD for technology. So while we have new ones coming in as well as replacements coming in, to come up with a collaboration effort with LAPD and how that could work. And additional funding opportunities could very well play in to help, even if they're secondary source and have a secondary purpose, where the primary for ADSAC would be to monitor traffic and accidents in controlled intersections. There could be secondary source funding as well from grants and other opportunities. So we should work very closely together on that. And then finally, the report to come back to this committee as well as T committee. And if there's no objection, we'd want the report to come back when that's a lot of work and a lot of focus. This has been 14 days.
Very generous.
14 days is a little more generous than where I was going to go with it. So I would like to see, though, an update, not necessarily a final report, but an update perhaps in the first quarter of the year, if that's reasonable.
Sure.
Just to hear what's going on, have we had any discussions, and if you need additional resources to collaborate this as well, what other departments or individuals, whether it's CLA or CAO, can come in to help, because I know there's a lot, particularly with on-officer cameras and all the other technology issues we've got to stay up on. We're exploring the new black and whites and bringing in those new technologies. There's a lot going on. So if that's reasonable for an update, we'll bring it back in the first quarter just for an updated discussion on how things are going. And I'll let the chair of the T committee schedule it on his time. Okay. 14 days. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Mr. LaBonge, I know you've got...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 3 items here as well that we partnered on, and I appreciate you sitting through the ADSAC discussion and allowing the staff and officers to get back to their jobs. I truly appreciate your patience. With that, we'll go ahead and take items 3, 4, and 5 together. We have speaker cards on those that we'll go ahead and hear first. Mr. Williams? You have cards on. We're taking all those together, so you have cards on a couple of those.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council Land Use Committee, primarily for items...
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Well, I want to make sure we have a deliberative discussion on this, and since we do have a number of cards, we'll go with a minute each.
Just 2.
Well,
I don't care about 5.
Let's keep them at 2, because they're 10:28. Because we're taking 3, 4, and 5 together, so we'll go ahead and allow you to speak on all 3 and take it at 2 minutes. So that's fine. We'll do that.
3 and 4.
Great.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
1 minute?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Basically.
It doesn't seem to be working. Is it?
On our side, it's showing flash.
Oh, it is?
Oh, it's counting down here. Now, well, it's...
I don't know what's on the other.
You've got the time.
Yeah, it's...
1 minute still.
I'll count it down. I'll start over. 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Don't pay attention to the clock. It's working on their side. So.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, number 3. Basic issue. My house. I have 4 pieces of paper in the Department of Building and Safety. 4 8.5 by 11s. Many houses in LA pre-1948 are reported under documented. The problem comes with the bond issue. How can I get a bond for doing tie downs, foundation work, and other elements within my house when I'm going to have to get an entire architectural engineering report for the entire building? I can't even put a solar panel on my roof without maybe spending $50,000 to get all of the other stuff brought up to code to just put a solar panel on. So we've asked for counter permits also for that.
1 minute.
So what we need is to separate out the 48 to 78 facilities versus those pre-1948, because there's a lot of us out there, especially in Northeast LA, and we need a special bond issue just for the pre-48 buildings retrofitting. For the item 4, you have certs already. Incorporate the fire department and the entire cert program into your SARDM. We have people that know the areas, they know the issues, they've been trained, at least basically, and they can help. And they can identify other issues that need to be brought to the SAR, whoever they may be. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Jim McQuiston, followed by Mr. Herman. If you want to come on up as well and have a seat, Mr. Herman. If you want to have a seat at the table as well. You filled out a speaker card. Did you want to speak? If you want to have a seat at the table, so you're next. Come on up. Jim, morning.
Jim McQuiston. Of course, there's a point of order. One of the members on the dais is not in the committee, and the Attorney General said that that's extremely improper. Although I support his motion with great force, we do have to think about the implication of having someone speak on the dais who is not a member of the committee. You have my report, and it's pretty complete. But I do want to put in one other item, a comment. In 1988, the federal government said that we had a problem with earthquake faults here. The city engineer said, no, we don't. The city engineer said that. And the state, of course, as you well know, does not agree with that, and neither does the federal government. 1988, that's a long time ago. And I'm going to put that in the record so everybody can read that what the city said to the federal government. This is a very, very difficult item for a lot of people, but I've suggested a solution which is easy for everybody. I'm a judge that goes up north a lot, and up north there are a lot of placards on buildings saying, this building is unsafe, enter at your own risk. And nobody pays any attention to them, but what it does is it gets the city out of liability if something happens in the building. And it also tells the property owner every time he sees that he should do something about his building. So it works on both ways, and it gives people time to reflect on what they're thinking about. This is a very, very serious problem, and as you've seen from my illustration, it is extremely dangerous.
Great. Thank you.
I do want you to go ahead with this, but there is a way that you can do this without
I got
killing everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And let me just address the comment. Mr. LaBonge was asked to join us for the discussion. He's not a voting member. He won't be voting on the actual committee questions or report, and so we're not looking for a dialogue back and forth. I'm just addressing your concern, and he can sit anywhere in the room he so chooses, and has earned that respect as well. And I welcome him here. So thank you very much, Mr. LaBonge. Mr.
For the record, my name is Armando Herman, resident of Boyle Heights.
If you could please sit down while you're talking,
Now,
if you could.
a person here who's homeless in the city of Los Angeles. But the articles we're talking about here is item 3 and 4. They're all combined. And again, violations of federal and state laws by local government, for the record, are inappropriate. When you allow large structures to be built under an earthquake fault, and then you come in here and you tell persons from our neighborhoods, like the gentleman who first spoke and said, hey, look, I live in this area, I have to restructure my building, make it safe, make it appropriate. But where's the action of the city involved in this? Again, under Fair Housing Act, under the Guide to the Rights of People with Disability Right laws, these are violations of obstruction by your departments of building and safety. Again, obstruction of building and safety for not doing their job, taking action to appropriately make sure that all of us are safe on the streets of Hollywood at any time and day. But we red tape all this and just push it to the side and let them build. Think of what you're doing to the public. Where's public interest in all this? Right? Where's public interest? Accountability of infrastructure. So for the record, again, the federal and state local government has a guideline book to laws. You must follow these guidelines to protect people with disability, the elderly who are prone, like the gentleman here who says he travels up and down. So again, I say out to all of you in the city of Los Angeles, take some action, come to City Hall and protest. We must keep affordable housing for those who need it, and we need to keep homeless people off the street. Homeless people must be off the streets of Los Angeles soon. It's an action that this city must take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So with that, if we can ask staff to come up. Various departments. And I would like to first open it up to Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you, members. One thing that's guaranteed, there will be another earthquake. I know each of you have a strong commitment, as do all members of council. I'm just carrying this matter forth because the last about 2 years, every meeting that I try to open up, I talk about 06 in San Francisco or 05?
87.
06 in San Francisco, 33 in Long Beach, Fields Act, 51 in Tehachapi, 71 in Sylmar, 87 in Whittier and Loma Prieta, 94 in Northridge, and we're going to celebrate or mark the anniversary, not celebrate. Scratch that from the record, Mr. Clerk. So,
20th
being said, you, Mr. Burnson, your predecessor, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Englander, all of us do have roles, and I just want to tool it up a little and bring people to the table. The one thing I do want to say about any kind of bond program, earthquakes know no boundaries, so it doesn't stop at the city limits, and I think it has to be a statewide bond as opposed to a municipal bond. But anyway.
I appreciate that. Let me open it up and as well. And thank you, Mr. LaBonge, for your continued partnership with both Councilman Burnson at the time, Greg Smith, and me. I thank you personally. Certainly the 12th District thanks you for your attention to this as well, your partnership on this. You're absolutely 100% correct. Earthquakes know no boundaries. It's not a matter of if the big one's going to hit next. It's when, and we know that with certainty. We also know that, and speaking for my district, we are the epicenter of disaster, if you will. It's a great district to represent, but we have certainly a lot of major incidents, not just the earthquake, and where we constantly and continuously push for being prepared, what to do afterwards, how to prepare your family, your businesses, your loved ones, your animals. We have emergency drills constantly with emergency preparedness initiatives. There's been a lot of legislation and great things that have come from the 12th District and my predecessors in partnership with Mr. LaBonge, the rest of the City Council, the state and the federal government. It was Mr. Burnson that introduced the idea of getting rid of the wood shake shingled roofs that would catch fire because we have annual fires in the 12th district as well. It was Mr. Burnson at the time also that introduced the idea of the auto shutoff valve for gas valves that every house built now in the city of Los Angeles or sold at the close of escrow shall have an emergency shutoff valve. It was a lot of these. It was Building and Safety and their partnership under Frank Bush and many others who have been phenomenal in ensuring that the codes are as such where we have mandatory water heaters strapped. All of the things that have been done to ensure further protections. But there's a lot more to do, and there's a lot that can be done. And it's really been a discussion of, and I want to really thank particularly the media, because oftentimes you don't get the type of press that we need in what we need to do to further enhance and protect and provide legislation and opportunities or funding sources to look at retrofitting and protecting building codes and standards for concrete non-ductile buildings, soft building structures. We don't get that type of attention. There's not a policy window unless there's a major disaster. The fact that this is being covered more now is a good thing because we can look at opportunities to enhance the system and what we can do to protect lives. And so I want to thank all of you here as well because you work tirelessly in looking for opportunities. And one of the things that I've said repeatedly is that, while you can't put a cost on a life at all, you also, it's very difficult, and it's a very difficult situation where we can't simply just mandate that building owners retrofit immediately all their buildings at a cost oftentimes far exceeding the value of their own building. They'll leave the building. They will defer other maintenance or rents if they could pass it through. The tenants couldn't afford it. And so we've got to figure out a way to balance that where we create either incentives, tax deductions, credits, a statewide bonding program where perhaps it's a part of a premium. Because at the end of the day, when the big one hits again, lives will be lost, and the cost to the residents, the cities, the counties, the state, the federal government will far exceed what the investment and the lives saved would mean. So if you could just walk us through these three various items and we can have a discussion on it. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Good morning. Anna Burton, Interim General Manager for the Emergency Management Department. The two items specific for our department were the one related to citywide earthquake preparedness and the second by Councilman LaBonge related to monthly earthquake drills. We apologize for the lateness, but a report was distributed last night related to earthquake preparedness. We worked very closely with the Department of Building Safety to really detail all the different earthquake programs and mitigation efforts that have been ongoing for some time. We go into some summary of the responsibilities of the Emergency Management Department related to citywide planning, training, and exercise, as well as community preparedness. And that's preparedness not only of all of our city employees, but the community as well. So we partner with all of the other city departments and agencies that play a critical role. Primarily, we work with the fire department. We support their CERT program. We're assisting in the expansion of the CERT program with LAPD to really leverage existing resources we have to expand that community-level preparedness that's been discussed repeatedly. We're also working with the Department of Recreation and Parks to ensure not only that we have facilities to accommodate people in evacuations, but they have staff trained in order to manage those facilities as well. One of the recent efforts that we've been doing is undergoing a complete review of all the city's plans and annexes to ensure they're compliant with ADA and we can meet the needs of the community with disabilities and access and functional needs. We work to train city employees. One of the most successful things we've had is we released this year our Disaster Service Worker Program for training of employees. As of this month, we have 32,000 employees that have undergone this training, and we'll be using the refresher. Is also a requirement within 30 days that all new employees complete this training as well. I think one of the things that we work with specific to training and exercise, through leveraging of Homeland Security grant funds, we've been able to publish and distribute a substantial amount of documents. Just this week, we had 30,000 documents delivered to the city related to recovery efforts, the Red Guide to Recovery. We'll be releasing those to a council district, Mr. Englander's office, who will be distributing those to the public. And we're also using additional funds to further distribute and to print and distribute those, the door hangers. So those will be going out in the very near future as well. So we're very proud of that. Using additional grant funds, last year in the Arroyo Seco neighborhood, we were able to work with the neighborhood council to very specifically design a neighborhood emergency plan and then exercise that plan. That plan and all of the exercise was released, as well as a video documenting and a toolbox how to develop that plan, to assist a neighborhood to develop their own plan. And with additional funds, we're going to be doing 4 additional exercises in different councils in the 2014 calendar year, and then we'll be conducting another exercise based on applications that we receive from the neighborhood councils to continue that.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, please.
All right, I don't know, anybody, maybe Luke, maybe you're the only one on the table. You remember monthly air raid sirens in school?
I do. I remember it was like one Friday a month. The sirens
Last Friday of the month or something.
Yeah.
Mr. Tifac? Mr. Ito, I'm sure you did at Verdugo Hills High. Under your desk, good job. My point is this, committee, are we fooling ourselves? Why not, have a last Friday of the month, just say, for businesses and their recovery will only be served by their preparation for a disaster. So if we say a last, and it's not a costly thing, but say, have a drill, in some way reflect it, and it doesn't necessarily mean exiting buildings, but just to know or something, have them develop something. I think we could capture that again. That's all I brought this to your attention. I didn't get a chance to see your report. But did you look at the last Friday of the month or any Friday of the month or whatever? And I know not everybody works Fridays anymore because of the change in work schedules. But
we do.
Okay, yeah. Did you report? I didn't see your report, Anna, but did...
I'm sorry. We reported specifically on earthquake preparedness. And we did outline some of the efforts that we're working with. For the city, we work very closely with the Department of General Services and their building emergency
But who
plan.
would... I'm asking who's... Because we were combining all these items, right?
Yes, sir.
So the one that calls for a monthly drill, did you have any thoughts on that? Item 5?
Yes, sir. So primarily focusing on the training of employees and the monthly drills that we'll be conducting during the neighborhood workshops. And we continue to work with General Services.
I got that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And maybe we got to have the fire department at the table here because they do CERT. And maybe the committee should just weigh in. Do you think we should try to have a drill? The Japanese drill feverishly on earthquakes and other issues, and I think that would be it's something that we should look at as they do around the world. That's the question.
So I think what we're going to leave here is with some various recommendations to come back as well, and so we'll consider that.
I don't want to dominate your time. I know we got council this morning on that issue.
This is really important.
Okay, good.
Dominate away. This is ask questions. Anything.
I've
This
got
is
it.
critically
Just
important.
You call for reports that they come back in a month. And I do believe, are we doing something for community awareness on the 20th and 17th of January?
I'll walk through that as well. Yeah, we
Okay.
got a lot
So
planned.
you got it.
Yep.
Good, super. Thanks, Mitch.
Fantastic. No, thank you. And thank you all. I do have several questions, but I wanted to, and some recommendations, but turn it over to my colleagues as well for comments.
I have something in regards to the local mitigation plans, local hazard mitigation plans. In my district, I'm home to a number, probably the highest number of refineries. I'd like to hear more about plans specific to the harbor and areas such as my district. am surrounded by the Port of Los Angeles and the refineries. Does the city have adequate plans and resources in place to ensure continued operations at the port and prevent or mitigate any release of materials at these facilities?
Each department is responsible for having its own departmental emergency plan and continuity of operations plan. We collect those annually and report on the status to the mayor. Specific to the release for the private entities or the leasors, I think the fire department has the detailed information on what the regulations and what their internal plans are.
Got it. So fire department works hand in hand with the refineries.
Yes.
And then, of course, the port has its own emergency plan.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. In doing a deeper dive on some of these motions as well, do we know how many buildings there are currently, soft-story buildings or concrete non-ductile buildings in the city of Los Angeles? Do we have an inventory?
Good morning. Luke Zamperini, Department of Building and Safety. We estimate that there's probably about 10,000 soft-story multi-residential buildings in the city.
And do we have an idea of the cost to retrofit one particular building, or on average?
I don't have those figures.
Okay. Is there a way to come up with, or is there...
I'm sure there could be an estimation.
Okay. If we can come up with an estimation so we get an idea of exactly what we're talking about, I think we need to get on a path to recovery and trying to figure out, okay, we've identified, we know they're at issue, and we know that they're less than safe in a major earthquake. That's a vulnerability. And so we need to do something proactively, and it's time. The conversation has taken place over many, many years, and the cost just keeps escalating. What we're looking to do, and certainly from my perspective, is come up with what are those costs, and then how can we come up with then those incentives to get these building owners to invest that type of capital to ensure not only that their properties are protected, but their tenants are protected. And perhaps those can be done with tax incentives. They can be done perhaps working with tax credits in lieu of property taxes. Often we do that, I believe, with old buildings that fall under the Mills Act, where they get a tremendous tax credit if it's considered a historic property in exchange for making sure the maintenance and operation and the character of that building is protected. There's no reason we can't look at similar practices like the Mills Act, quite frankly, in getting and urging landlords and building owners to invest in their property. So I don't look at this as an unfunded mandate at all, but more of as a partnership. Then the idea of going to the state and perhaps working with the insurance commissioner and trying to figure out a carve-out, whether if it was $1 on everybody's property insurance bill in the state of California, that would probably cover enough of a pool to allow an investment plan to come out for repairing and enhancing and retrofitting these buildings. I mean, we don't know the dollar figures, but I think we've got to start having that conversation as soon as possible. So I'd like to see that come back as well. And then lastly on this, I want to thank you all, because while there's a lot of deep discussion and a lot of concern, rightly so, about these types of structures here in Los Angeles, we are doing far more to prepare ourselves here. And what we're doing in terms of earthquake drills, Mr. Labange mentioned a monthly drill. I'd like some ideas on what we can do to enhance what we currently do. And a lot of what you talked about and the partnerships that we have with the OK Help Signs, the door hanger programs, those are incredibly unique. And the CERT expansion that we're doing with the fire department is now, we are now certifying all of our senior lead officers, by the way. We're in the middle of updating. We've had some new hires recently in our office over the last year, updating my staff in CERT certification. For the last 10 years, we've been able to say that we're the only council staff where the entire office is CERT certified. We'll continue to challenge every other department and every other council office to become CERT certified. There's lunch in it from our office to the next council office that's able to claim that title. So I'll throw out that challenge. I believe we also set the example of having the only council office with a full emergency plan and phone tree list and full contacts for every city department, that every city employee or every council employee in our office is required to keep on them at all times. And so we've got that as well, and we ask that other departments as well as council offices step up to do that and work with you folks to ensure that they know how to put those plans together, as we have. Those are the things we've got to do, Mr. LaBonge. And so those will be the various recommendations. I want to thank you very much once again for this report, what you've put together, but we've got to continue on this. I'd like this to come back as soon as you're ready with identifying some of those average costs, and then we can start talking about incentive programs, identifying those particular properties. I think it would be a grave mistake to come out with a list and simply start labeling buildings for their safety and putting the fear of people out there in what, because we simply don't know, just because it's built a particular way, how we can label that as the county does with restaurants. It's just not that simple. And
I'll work with them too, and I'll report back. Luke and I are going to go meet the apartment house owners and to try to allay fears, and also working with state legislators. So I'll keep you posted. I thank this committee very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. If we can work with the various stakeholders into coming up with some of those options as well, maybe there's a stakeholder roundtable discussion that we could take place. I'd be happy to bring in Mr. LaBonge to lead those discussions as well. Okay, so that'll be the action of this committee, and we'll bring it back hopefully in the first quarter of the year as well with a report back on identifying some of those options, opportunities, costs, and hopefully we can get the roundtable discussion between the stakeholders, Apartment Owners Association, BOMA, the Building Owners and Managers Association, those various stakeholders together so we can come up with, and the insurance companies as well that might have some great ideas. Terrific. Excellent. That'll be the action of this item without objection. Thank you.
And as I leave, I want to introduce Sam Holland, Troop 110, Boy Scouts of America, working on his merit badge. Good job there, Sam.
We've got one final item, item 6.
Item 6, Board of Police Commissioners report and the CO2 report. Motion, Englander Garcetti Buscaino requesting the city's cybersecurity working group report relative to its initial work and its plans for ensuring the security of the city's critical infrastructure systems.
Great, thank you very much. And with this, I understood the mayor's office had another meeting this morning, couldn't make it here this morning, I believe. So I wanted to, and this is a note and file, but wanted to thank Mr. Garcetti, our mayor, and I say Mr. Garcetti at the time. He was a co-author as a council member with Councilmember Buscaino when we introduced this to examine the security of the city's critical information technology and infrastructure, trying to come up with and work with the various departments and look at a global security and cyber attack analysis of critical systems, information sharing, and establish the City Cybersecurity Working Group, which from that and those discussions and meetings, which my office attended as well and was happy to be part of, we together launched the Cyber Intrusion Center in coordination with LAPD, which is now up and running. The idea with that is to not only look at being in a defensive but an offensive position where we can close a lot of those technological loopholes and cyber risks where we are incredibly vulnerable just as a city in general. All of our infrastructure, our wastewater systems, our power grid, our water systems, our ADSAC systems we talked about, all of our, in fact, street camera systems, but street lighting, everything we do has a technological cyber risk, and a great one at that, and it's growing exponentially every day, as we well know in what we're seeing in China, in Russia, in Israel. The threats are real, and so it's taken very seriously. We are putting tremendous resources, energy, effort, technology, and expertise. We brought them together and putting that towards that effort. So I wanted to thank the mayor's office, thank LAPD, all the various departments that have been focused on this. It's critically important because we know that with certainty a major attack on American soil at some point in the future will be a cyber attack. And so we need to ensure that the city is well protected on that front as well. So we'll note and file that unless there's any other comments from committee. And that'll conclude all the items. I believe we are adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Thank you. On time and on budget.